mixed into that, you might be able to see it's not ants or anything like that. Hi everyone, it's Jen from Easy Healthy Tasty here, and I am going to do a Facebook Live doing some cheesy caraway scones. Now, a few weeks ago when I was talking about roast vegetables, I mentioned caraway and that I had a cheesy caraway scone recipe, and someone said, oh gee, I'd love to see that. So here we are tonight. It's not a difficult recipe. It's a slightly different method though to the recipe that Charity did a few weeks ago on Mother's Day. And it's a savoury scone, not a sweet scone. So I hope that you enjoy. This is the kind of thing that I cook when my family are having soup, like we might be having like we are having tonight. It is something that is really easy to cook to go with soup if you want something that's like a bread roll, but you don't really have time to bake bread or to go out to the shops and buy bread and stuff like that. So it's a pretty easy recipe. There are very few ingredients. In this bowl, I have 3 cups of flour, a pinch of salt, and because I have plain flour, I put in some baking powder as well. And that sort of makes the plain flour self-raising flour. But of course, to be super easy, you could just use self-raising flour. I'm just mixing through the salt and the baking powder. And then I'm going to add this, which is 90 grams of chopped butter. And it's very cold. I've just got it out of the fridge to use. I did wash my hands immediately before we started this Facebook Live, and that is because I'm really going to get my hands dirty doing this. So I'm tipping in the chopped butter, and then I'm going to rub these pieces of butter into the flour like this, which is just where you pinch it between your fingers and sort of, well, you rub it between your fingers basically. So you're rubbing the butter in, and what that does is it sort of creates little lumps of butter in the flour. And I do mean little lumps of butter. You don't want big lumps of butter in the flour. You want it to be fairly finely distributed. But yeah, I'm getting both hands in to rub the butter through the flour. And this is really traditional making scones. Other ways you could do this if it's difficult for you, I mean, I do have to apply quite a bit of pressure to the butter because it is very cold, and it needs to be cold to distribute properly. Like to rub it through my hands, the heat of my hands will warm the butter up quite quickly, so it needs to be quite cold to be able to use this technique. Otherwise I'd just sort of be smearing the butter everywhere. But if that kind of dexterity is difficult for you, you can use a food processor to sort of to chop the butter up really finely with the flour. Just put the butter and flour in there together, and you would get a really, actually it would be super quick, be much quicker than what I'm doing now. So can you see how, as I rub it through, the mix it's starting to look less like flour, and I've got quite large chunks still of butter, but.
Do you have to spread it evenly through the flour, and how do you know when you're done?
Well, yeah, you do want it relatively evenly through the butter. Thanks, Paul. So relatively easily through the flour. You know that you're done when there are no big chunks like this anymore. So when you can sort of run your hands through it and you're not coming across those big chunks that you had at the beginning, and the mix will start to look like breadcrumbs. Fine breadcrumbs is what they, the way they would describe this kind of mix. Honestly, it doesn't matter too much. I mean, I'm usually making this when I'm in a bit of a hurry, so I'm not carefully assessing whether or not I have fine breadcrumbs or anything like that. Well, if you zoom in on the flour now, you'll see it's not that fine texture anymore. You've got, it's kind of, well, it's crummy, right? As you can see, there are still a few lumps that I'm trying to get out, but I've done most of the work here. Pretty well done. I'm now putting in some grated cheese. This is pre-grated cheese. So you could use, just grated cheese you buy in a packet, grated tasty cheese. You could use mozzarella. This is left over from some grated mozzarella that we had on pizzas. Tasty cheese, cheddar cheese. You could even crumble feta. And look, this is about 90 grams, or look, it works out to be just what you would call a scant cup, so just under a cup. And mixed into that, you might be able to see, it's not ants or anything like that. It's the caraway seeds. So this is 2 teaspoons of caraway seeds that I have inside, mixed into this cheese. And I'm tipping that all in and just mixing it with a fork to distribute it through the flour nice and evenly. And then I have a cup of milk here, and I'm going to tip that through. And you might see as I mix it through, just adding a little bit of a time, and then a little bit at a time, sorry, and then I'm mixing it through with a knife, which is quite unusual. But that's the kind of method for scones. You don't want them too over mixed. So really the motion is not stirring, you're actually sort of chopping at the mix to stir that milk through the flour and butter and cheese. And now that it's sort of all in, I'm getting my hand in to kind of mix everything together with my hand, and I'm going to have a ball of dough when I'm done. But this isn't like making bread or anything. And I'm really trying not to knead it. I'm just trying to get it all to stick together. I may just need an extra little bit of milk. We'll see how we go. I think I'm going to just get a tiny little bit of milk. I might have had a little bit of extra flour, or I might, it's just a bit of a splash. Yeah, so I might have had a bit of extra flour or a bit of extra something. So I just needed a bit of extra milk for it all to stick together. And I'll put a little bit of extra flour from my container on my chopping board so things don't stick. I don't need much. Tip out my dough. And I really am just trying to combine it all. It doesn't need working like a bread dough might, but I'm pressing it down, and you'll see that I've got the whole mix here is probably a couple of centimeters, 2 to 3 centimeters thick, my mix. And I'm going to cut it into scones. Now, I don't have cookie cutters at all in my house, but I have glasses, and actually that's what I use to cut scones all the time. So I want to make sure they're not going to stick to my glass, so I'm just rubbing that in a bit of flour, the rim of my glass. And then I'm going to use my glass like a cookie cutter. There we go. Done. Now, scones, I crowd them on the pan. Why do I do that? Because someone from the CWA, I think, or some chef I saw doing this, did that to scones, and I thought, yeah, that works. I find if you crowd the scones together, then they don't turn out hard like rock cakes. They just go nice and coloured on the outside, but fluffy on the inside. So I've got all this extra, and I just need to push that all together. Push that all together. Again, to about 2 to 3 centimeters thick, and go again. Oh, tiny.
You can do a scruffy one at the end.
I do, yeah, that's right. I just sort of stick that there and we'll be fine. Oh, hang on, no, look, there's a hole. I'll stick it where that hole is. Okay, so they're all laid out on my pan, my tray now. And what I'm going to do is, just so they get really nice and browned on top, is just brush them with a little bit of milk. If you skip this step, that would be fine. They just wouldn't probably go as brown on top, but they'd still taste fine. piece de resistance is I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of my cheese. This is my pizza cheese. Cups of dough, and I'm just going to put a little bit of that on each, like across the top. Not too much, because I don't want like melted cheese like you might have on a pizza. I just want nice kind of little strands of the cheese baked in and nice and golden on top. I could sprinkle a few more caraway seeds on top. They're ready to go in the oven now. I've preheated the oven to 220 degrees. It has been cooking away while I've been cooking here. And so I will put these in the oven, and they go in for about 15 minutes, and then I'll check them, and they may need another 5. When I check them, I'll be looking to see that they're nice and golden on top, and that there's no kind of, they're not looking doughy on the inside. They're looking cooked on the inside, so not looking raw on the inside. I hope that you've been inspired by this. I hope that next time you have soup, you feel like you can cook something really creative to go with it. If you want more of our recipes, if you go to easyhealthytasty.com, you'll find our book, which has a lot of no-chop recipes for people who are new to cooking, or for people who are in a rush, or for people who just find chopping difficult. Everything is there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again another time on Easy Healthy Tasty.